Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Nilab. I work with the New England Rural Health Association. We are a nonprofit focused in rural health across the 6 New England states. There is a national level rural health association, so we get to represent all 6 of the New England states. And we are here today with the University of Connecticut's Technical Assistance to Brownfields, UConn TAB. We are their rural outreach and engagement partner. And today, this session is tailored around rural towns or regional partners applying for the fiscal year 2026 EPA Brownfields funding. We'll walk through how to structure your application from defining your project area to showing community need, engagement, and organizational capacity. All right, so just a quick run through our agenda. We'll do a quick few minutes on just describing brownfields and rural community needs, setting the stage, and then we'll go through the EPA grant information narrative, sections 1, 2, and 4, so we'll kind of jump around. And then we'll provide some resources for rural applicants, so helpful websites, mapping tools to kind of walk through that. All right, so as we know, there's common challenges that are faced when addressing brownfields. Some of that involves constrained local budgets, fewer people available to manage brownfields projects. And the other thing that's unique to New England is that there's plenty of large parcels that are uncontaminated properties nearby brownfields, which lowers the market demand for brownfield reuse. But when you choose to redevelop a brownfield, you're addressing economic revitalization, public and environmental health protection, infrastructure, and land use efficiency. So getting right into it, this slide is critical. So it shows exactly how EPA reviewers will score your application, and you should organize your narrative to align with these 4 criteria. So each need to be clear, specific, and well-documented responses. Getting strong on all 4 gives you the best shot at a competitive grant, meaning full points in each section. And this webinar is going to give you a high-level overview of the fiscal year 2026 Brownfields grant opportunities. I won't be really going into line-by-line specifics of the MAC grants, but just more of like an overview of a role perspective and helpful tips and things to include in your application. All right, so getting into it, section 1. So begin by clearly defining your geographic boundary. So your project area, rural town, this could be a former mill district, a stretch of Main Street, or a cluster or 3 of disused properties along a corridor. Then identify the brownfield site or sites within that area, the known and current conditions, and the history of the site. Be explicit. What kinds of contamination or hazards exist? Like a former gas station, an old industrial site, a leaking underground storage tank. The reviewers might not know the area as well as you do, so try to explain it as if they don't know the site or the neighborhood. Next, explain why these sites matter to your community. Maybe they're near a well or water source. Maybe the buildings are falling apart and pose a safety hazard. Maybe their presence prevents economic investment or a blight to the downtown. The extent to which the proposed project will improve local resilience to the impacts of extreme weather events and conditions. Mention that as well. Then, and this is especially important, articulate a credible, realistic vision for reuse. And if you don't have one, it's important that you mention that. Don't leave any question unanswered. So for example, if you're converting an old mill into affordable housing or community space, turning a vacant lot into community garden or local business incubators, definitely mention all of that. And think to yourself, why does this reuse make sense for our community? And because rural communities might have limited growth pressures, reuse doesn't need to be grand, but it must be community-centered, realistic, and tied to the local needs. And then finally, show how you might leverage other resources, perhaps state or local funds, other federal funds, maybe labor, volunteer labor, historic preservation incentives, tax breaks, public-private partnerships. Show the reviewers that you're thinking beyond just EPA grants, increasing your viability and sustainability. All right, so just to kind of reiterate here that because populations are small and budgets are limited, many brownfield sites have been neglected for decades, but that neglect actually does help illustrate both the need and urgency for redevelopment. Also, rural areas' contaminated sites are often directly impact private wells or unregulated water sources, making environmental risks more personal and acute. Redevelopment doesn't always need to be big commercial sites like we talked about. Reuse could be affordable housing, community facilities, small scale. These kind of projects often align with community values and can have big impacts in your community. In your narrative, lean into the rural aspects, so small scale, community benefit, local ownership, sustainability. So going into criteria 2 here, so section 2. So this is where you show how the brownfields problem impacts real people in your community and how you will involve them in shaping the solution. So start by assembling your relevant data to real conditions like your local poverty, unemployment rates, demographic changes, infrastructure deficits, data on water quality or reliance on private wells, aging house stock, healthcare access disparities, if that's relevant to your redevelopment plan. And even if large statistic data sets are lacking, qualitative evidence, such as community stories or testimonials, are still very useful. I won't go too much into the health data part of it. There'll be a webinar posted next week about that, so check in with us later. But then you want to describe in plain language how brownfields affects daily life. So maybe that abandoned building attracts dumping or poses hazards, vacant lots that depress the neighborhood value, contaminated risks for water or soil, or simply a barrier to economic investment and local pride. Next, you want to outline a community-centered engagement plan that recognizes the rural realities. EPA has a fact sheet for socially distant engagement ideas, which could be useful to use. You could also plan your outreach at local centers, community halls, libraries, use local newsletters or town mailing lists, use community-based organizations or regional councils, and tap into existing social networks to save time on outreach. And if possible, allocate a portion of funds towards a community liaison, someone from the community who can engage neighbors directly and engage the neighbors that are directly affected as well. So this approach is explicitly supported by EPA as a valid use of funds. So UConn Tab, we're going to work towards building a resource for that. So check in with us later as well if that's something that you might need. And if you want to save space in your application, there's a sample format that EPA has provided from the webinar earlier this morning that you can kind of list out project roles for community engagement. Okay, finally, and this is key, commit to using community input in decisions. So you might propose that the site prioritization will reflect what residents care most about. So maybe that's safety, water quality, or reuse preference, or that the reuse vision will respond directly to the community's needs. So maybe that's housing, local business, a green space. How often and what means will you use to communicate this? And showing that commitment helps demonstrate real local ownership and strengthens your application significantly. And I also want to mention that to get full points in the section for the community need, you must indicate a low population or low income, so 15,000 population or less. And if you don't fit into that category, it's possible of not getting full points. And then now jumping ahead to section 4. EPA doesn't expect a large team and knows that capacity can be a challenge. But what they do expect is who's doing what and who's responsible and how you will ensure proper management. What tools or softwares will you use to manage your grant? List that. And if your town staff is limited, leverage partners, regional planning commissions, state brownfields programs, nonprofits, consultants. These can all kind of help fill in the gap. So for coalition applications, you must clearly show legal authority for the lead entity to manage funds on behalf of non-lead members, and that's new for this year. Also, if you or your partner have managed other grants, even small planning grants are non-federal or federal, include that history. And if you haven't really managed a federal grant before, you want to propose a clear administrative plan. Designate a program manager, describe procurement, oversight procedures, and commit to transparent reporting. That level of detail helps build confidence with reviewers that you're ready to manage a federal grant responsibly. So getting into a little bit of the data that you could use on the slide, we want to emphasize the importance of geospatial mapping tools when preparing your application. These tools can help you better understand that communities that are being disproportionately affected by environmental or health risks are showcased here. So EPA strongly encourages applicants to use this kind of data directly in the narrative. So use information from maps, demographic data, health indicators to help you clearly characterize your target area and show why community needs this investment. In addition to mapping tools, applicants can also bring in data from studies, census, third-party reporting to help fill in the fuller picture of who's impacted and how. And I wanted to bring your attention to EPA's fact sheet, specifically page 22. They have lots of helpful resources on what kind of information to include and from where. And the typical ones are like HRSA, CDC, HUD, EPA's own database. But then for rural applicants, there's also rural-specific resources you can leverage. I wanted to go through just a few of those today here. So the Rural Health Information Hub has a MI Rural tool or the Rural Data Explorer, which you can plug in an address and it gives you the information on whether being rural or not. And then the NERA Rural Health Database helps you sift through, excuse me, sift through rural compared to urban health metrics. And then the USDA's data tool has like a fact sheet on population, income, food security, which you can use those as well. Some may not know, but states have their own data that you could use that comes from the state offices of rural health. There's some studies that can be found on the Health and Human Services website for each state, which I'll show an example in the next few slides. So this tool here is from the Rural Health Information Hub, which is the Rural Data Explorer. What you can search by here is different indicators. You can select what you want to look for. Then you can select your year, which the most current in most cases is 2023. It'll show you the state information, and then it'll show you county level. You could select metro versus non-metro area and to compare those information. The next one is from the USDA. This is the county level data sets, which again show you county level rates of poverty by age. So there's one that's 0 to 17, and then all people in poverty. You can see it by state. And then again, you can see rural or not rural. A lot of this information does come from the census. So it does seem repetitive, but there's additional metrics that you can add on top. So that being rural, you can indicate that as well and kind of filter through there as well. All right, so the next one, this one comes from the Maine's Health and Human Services website. They did a study from 2014 to 2023, I believe. And you're seeing two screenshots here that I took from that could be potentially helpful in an application. The first one is indicating that fewer deaths that are causing an imbalance in population structure. So that's meaning there's a higher aging population. And then the second screenshot shows the median age in Maine has increased even more than the national level, which can be an interesting perspective to pull into your application. So the next tool is our very own NERA tool. This is useful because there's numerous ways you can kind of look at things here. So I want to bring your attention to a few different parts, which I hope you can see my mouse because I'm going to kind of point to things. But first, you can select your state. Right now, I have all 6 New England states selected. And this map can be found on our website, thenera.org, so I will link to everything at the end. But you want to select your state. So right now, all 6 states are selected. Then you can select your category. There's quite a few different categories, but I selected health status for this one and COPD. And then you come to this side over here where you'll see your results based on rural or not. And then you can further filter that into small rural, large rural, non-rural, and then rural core, which I'll show you in the next one. When you hover over the county, so let's say you want to look at one of the metrics from a specific area, if you hover over it, it'll give you exactly where the information is coming from and a little bit more detail. So the next slide, we can see I selected Maine as my state. I selected my data as mortality, and then I selected cancer as my specific measure. And this is giving you the crude rate. So I also selected further rurality filtering. So as you can see, there is some differences between being a small rural area to a non-rural area in rates of cancer. So that could be helpful as well. And the definitions for rural here come from consultation with the 6 New England State Offices of Rural Health, and they're using the 2010 Index of Relative Rural Approach from Purdue. So that's where that information comes from. Alrighty, so kind of tying everything back together here, wrapping it up. So when you describe your community as rural or non-urban, it's important to support that statement with data. So don't just say it with words, but definitely show it. And start by clearly identifying your town or project area as a non-metropolitan area and include basic demographic information like your population size. This all helps reviewers immediately understand the scale and characteristics of your community. You also want to highlight the conditions that demonstrate rurality, and this can include long distances to essential services, limited or sparse infrastructure, reliance on private water systems, and significant travel distances to healthcare providers. Altogether, these details can help build a strong case for why your community has unique challenges and why targeted brownfields funding is needed. So that's all that I have for now. I've listed here our different sources that we went through. I've had our contact information here, but I definitely want to drop everything into the chat really quick so that you all could get that easily. And if there's any questions, definitely throw them in while I gather all that information for you all. So that's the USDA state sources. And then this one is the RHI MI Roll tool. The next one here is the NERA tool. And then I'm also going to throw in that main study that I showed. So I don't see any questions at this time, but I will hang on a little bit longer, give people some time. Unless there's anything I've missed, you feel free to unmute your mic and ask a question. And this webinar will be posted on the UConn Tab website shortly after